United States of America, did that exist in the first century?
First century.
Yeah. Oh, so obviously, Mormonism could not have started in the first century. But this gentleman doesn't think so. Because he times, and your friend, do you know him? He doesn't even want to back you up here. Did Muhammad write the Quran in AD 568? No, question. Question, please.
Let me read it.
Question, please.
Why you say that you believe in history? Okay. So how do you prove that your history is true?
My problem exactly is that how can we speak about death and resurrection of someone without a positive connotation? Just giving a neutral response to that. Yes, of course. If someone were to live,
if you were to go to any cemetery right now and you saw somebody pull out of their coffin, would it be positive for you, or would you be kind of spooked out like, yo, what's going on?
No, it won't be. Oh, what's going on? Wow, what's happening here? This is significant.
You're a liar. I'm telling you, you're a liar right now. You're lying to me.
So if someone were to live, die, come back alive, are you saying, oh, it's just part of normal life, you'll just go on as if nothing happened? Is that what you're saying?
I will be taken back by it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, in other words, you want to investigate more. You would think this is significant, wouldn't you?
No, but you're saying that it's strictly a positive connotation.
Well, if someone were to die, come back alive, is that good news, great news? We found a cure for death, haven't we?
Well, I'm saying that's not in its entirety. I don't believe so.
So if someone were to die, come back alive,
with zombies. That's
if someone were to die,
positive.
Now, zombie is
People coming back to life.
My dear friend, you know in what the meaning of the term zombie is. It's zombies aren't about living life. That's what they're about. So I'm not talking about a zombie. I'm talking about resurrection.
Yes.
A dead man coming back full and well alive. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about zombies and spirits and so on. So if someone were to die and come back alive, yes, isn't that great news?
I guess so. My question to that is, what should I do with that news? Like, what should I do with it?
Well, if I got to know about someone who died, came back alive, I'd say, well, this is something I'm going to seriously check out.
And then after you checked it out, what next?
In this case, Jesus says he would do the same to you. When you die, when I die, he is able to give you and give me life again. So I'd say, well, this is phenomenal. I thought it was only with...
Have you got any proof of that what you just said happened?
So I have a proof of the fact of Jesus' resurrection in history, and I have a proof of him
bringing other people back to life.
Well, let's put it this way: if you let's say a medical doctor, in a hospital, yeah, when you go there, not you, when a particular person goes there, let's say for a heart surgery, the proof that you'd ask him is, have you done a surgery to me? That's not the proof you'd ask. Have you done a surgery before? Are you qualified? Can you do this? And if there is some way where the person says yes, then you'd say, oh, well done, I'll take you. Similarly, with Jesus, the question to be asked is, do you know about resurrection? Not, have you resurrected me, but rather, do you know about resurrection? And Jesus would say, of course, I died and I came back alive in the first century. And that is his qualification. Based on that, I say, Jesus is someone I would follow.
Completely didn't answer anything that I just said.
Your question was, has he brought anyone back alive?
Yes.
My point is, that's not the right question to ask. The right question...
How are you going to tell me what the right question is to ask if I'm asking you a specific question?
That's exactly the point.
You have to deal with the question.
That's exactly my dealing with the question, my dear friend.
No, you're not. You dealt with the question by saying that's the wrong question to ask.
Yeah, which is
that's
a dealing.
Not a valid answer.
So that's my answer to that question. So let me give you a couple of names.
Answer the question.
Lazarus, Jesus rose him back from... Well, you're not listening now. Lazarus came back alive through Jesus. Lazarus come out and he came back in Israel, Judea, in the first century. A dead man, 4 days, fourth day comes back alive, Lazarus. a young girl, he says, Talitha Kumi, young girl, raise up, and she comes back alive in front of the parents and the close disciples. So you ask me, has he resurrected people? Yes, he has. But the more crucial point, is, the question we need to ask is not, has he resurrected him? Has he resurrected?
The question you want to ask, because now you're just putting things in people's mouths. I can't even remember, but whatever questions I posed to him, he would say that's not the question to ask. But it's the question I've asked him.
So if I can remind you,
tell me my question isn't.
So the question you asked me was, do I have proofs to say Jesus resurrected other people?
Yes.
My question to you is, that's not the question to ask. The question to ask is, has he resurrected anyone, including himself? And my answer is, him coming back alive in itself, even if he didn't raise up anyone else alive, him raising up to life himself is enough evidence for me to say, this guy knows what he is talking about.
Excuse me, what is your name?
Please go on.
What is your name?
Arul.
Arul, okay. Because he asked for proof, but I didn't hear proof.
Yeah, no, so I can handle it. It's all good.
No problem. That's why, because
it don't make sense. It don't make sense.
So what does it make sense? Someone living, coming back alive.
Yes.
Isn't that good news for you? Again, please.
Why? I want to know why it's good news for me.
Yeah.
Well, if someone, do you think you will die someday?
That's a fact. Yes.
So you know you'll die someday.
Yes.
Would you want to die?
What do you mean?
Would you rather prefer to live forever?
That's an impossibility. So I want you to
I'm not asking you if it's an impossibility
No,
or
but
not.
I'm
asking
not,
you, would
I'm
you
not
rather
playing
like
around.
to?
I'm not playing around with childish fantasy. If I know it's an inevitability, I'm not going to now.
So you think coming back alive is childish fantasy, but I just told you in history it has happened at least once, and therefore calling something which has happened once is not a fantasy,
So
is not a good idea.
If it happened,
Yeah.
what should I do about that?
Well, if it has happened at least once,
Yes.
you first of all need to take one step forward and say, oh, this is not fantasy anymore. This
and
seems
then
to be
what?
reality.
So
and
for
therefore,
me, so you want me to resurrect as well? Is that what you're trying to say?
And therefore, you would then need to seriously consider the question, which is, would you rather live forever rather than just die?
Why?
If there are two options,
Yes.
you die and that's it, end of story, and option two, you live forever. Which one would you prefer?
What death are you referring to? The physical sense of death?
Yeah, any sense of death. Let's say the physical sense of death.
Yeah.
Would you rather live forever?
Not in the physical. Wait, I'm really confused now. Because
I know, because you don't want to answer the question.
Jesus.
You don't seem to want to answer the question. You obviously know what the question is. If you were given two choices, one you die, and that's
the
it.
only choice. I don't know what else we're talking about.
The other thing which you think is a fantasy, I've just told you is not a fantasy, because at least Jesus came back alive.
Is he here right now?
He is alive.
Is he here right now?
He needn't be here for him to be alive.
Is he here?
He
In a
needn't
physical
be here
sense.
for him
In a
to be
physical
alive.
sense, is he here?
He is here in a sense, that
In
is
a
true.
physical sense, is he here?
Well, God is not just a physical person, no.
So is he here in a physical sense? You're
As a
referring
man
to
like you
you're
showing
referring
up here,
to-
no.
You're referring to a physical resurrection.
I am,
He had a physical resurrection. That's what you're referring to.
my dear friend, you as a
But
person
he's
is,
not here right now in the physical.
you as a person is not just your physical body.
I know that.
And therefore, I'm not talking about a pure physical resurrection
So-
alone.
so yeah, so what-
I'm talking about, I didn't ask your name, but you as a person
Yes.
know who you are.
Yes.
In terms of identity, I'm talking about that person
Yes.
coming back alive,
In the physical.
including in the physical,
Not
including.
I'm saying in the physical as
Well,
we're
you as a
standing here.
person is not your physical being alone.
Just say you don't know. Just say he's ineffable, Lord.
Well, if I did not know, I would say that. If you did not know, you stick to that. But don't tell me what I should say when I don't know what you're talking about. So, my dear friends, Jesus' resurrection is a fact of history. There is no point arguing against it. A fact of
If
history.
if it's true, what next? What do you want me to do about that?
If it is true,
Yes.
I'd like you, first of all, to say,
Yes.
wow!
Why should I say wow?
This is getting really interesting here.
Yeah, if
I'm
If
it
you
seems
get to that
it seems
stage, I
it
have to
seems
ask the
like
question.
I'm trying to tell you what you should do about good news, great news, death and life after death. Hooray! That's what you need to be saying. You shouldn't be saying, "Wow, this is boring."
So resurrection into a physical form is something I should be like raring and
So,
getting excited about.
so here we seem to have a problem, and that's why I'm asking you the question again. If you were given two choices, die and that's it, end of story, live
Which I
forever,
would.
which one would you rather have?
One, I would
You
say
know
we
what the
die
question is?
physically, and two, we are immortal anyway. So that's out the window.
So you're immortal anyway.
Yeah.
Where
In a
are you
non-physical
going?
sense,
Where are you going to live in your immortal life? Where?
what
better
you would
plan
call heaven.
properly.
What you would call heaven.
No, heaven is not just your place where you just turn up there.
That's why I said what you would call heaven. I didn't say it's an exclusive, my only place. I didn't say that.
No, I never said it's your exclusive place. I am just saying you won't end up there just without any plan. You don't end up. You and I won't.
So what plan? Give me the plan then.
My dear friend, you and I won't end up in, let's say, the sunny beaches of California, the beautiful places in the world, even the beautiful places in this world, you and I won't end up without a plan. How much more the heaven? The heavens, you're not just going to turn up purely because you just think you'll turn up there. You need to know on what basis you would be there, and you need to make sure you satisfy the criteria for that.
Okay. So what?
And the criteria is God. Where God is what is called heavens. Heavens is, there we go. Where God is, that is what heaven is. And once you know God, then you are beginning to know what God in human history showed up.
Only verifiable. Is that what you? Is that
right.
the language you want to use?
Yes, only verifiable.
Verifiable.
God.
Okay, how do you verify it?
Well, in human
That's
history.
an interesting statement.
What?
That's an interesting statement
Good.
that you just said there. How do you verify it?
Now I'm
The
seeing a
only
bit,
one, sorry, the
my
only
dear
one
friend.
that you can
Now
verify.
I am seeing a bit of expression there, which is really good.
Because
So,
you
this is
using
the-
language is kind of crazy.
This
That's
is
why.
well, no, it's not crazy. This is great news. Only verifiable
Okay,
God.
go ahead.
Is there any other God on the face of the earth who can be verified to be God? I find no one.
So verify it. Give me the proof.
In
The
terms of
Jews
Jesus,
The Jews say that.
in terms of Jesus, I could verify him to be God because he seems to have power over life, over death.
Okay.
He seems to know how to give life.
Okay.
He seems to know how to heal infirmities.
Where did
he
you see
seems
that?
to,
Where did you see
he
that?
seems to be able to command even nature.
Where
he
did you
seems
see
to
that?
even
Where did you see that?
well, you better begin reading history, my dear friend. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. When last did you read the Bible?
Whoa.
No, you skip. Don't let him dance. Don't let him
No
When
dance.
last did
problem.
you read the Bible?
Why do you say that in? Sorry,
When last
my
did you read
English
the
is
Bible?
not so good. Sorry,
That's
but
fine.
you say Matthew, John, Luke from the Bible. Why do you believe that?
Because it's history.
What?
No,
Because it's history.
not history.
No, no,
because
no.
it's the Bible.
Why do you? Because it's
Because it's in the
history.
Bible.
Yep. I believe in history. Don't you?
So
Do you believe in history or not? Well, don't
in
give
history-
any expression
Stop.
purely because
In
you don't know
history-
what your answer is.
Problem. In
he's
history,
looking to set you up. He's trying to set you up.
Would you believe history or not?
there are fake history, yes or not?
Now, I'm not talking about fake history.
There are
I'm
fake
talking
history,
about
yeah or no?
history.
You see, why you say that you believe in history? Okay. So how do you prove that your history is true?
No. Careful. Let's
That
be
was the
careful.
original thing.
Let's
That
be
was the
careful. This
original
is
point.
not my history as if it's in my pocket.
Okay.
This is our human history.
If it was,
So,
if it was
in
our
human
way,
history, in the first century,
Yeah.
you have Jesus as a person show up in Judea. Do you agree or not?
I have only one question. Why do you believe Matthew, John, Luke? I don't know.
Because it's history.
But there are fake history. How do you know that your history is
Can
true?
you please explain why this is fake history?
Well, man, explain to me why you believe it's true. You believe it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't believe it.
Yeah, no, I know.
So,
I
explain
know.
to me,
I
please.
can explain to you why this is real history,
The story
but I'd
don't
like
match
to,
up.
Okay.
at
Let
least
him
after I
come.
finish,
Let him come
at
with
least after I finish, I'd like you to give some comments for you audaciously using the term fake history in relation to the Bible. Either you don't know what you're talking about, yet want to claim this to be fake, purely because it advances some of your other ideas, maybe. So you need to then explain. I can tell you why I consider this to be history, not fake history, history.
True history.
Well, history is true.
The story
No,
don't
no,
match
no.
up. The story Mark, Luke, and John, it doesn't match up.
What do you mean? What do you mean,
If
man?
you read it, it doesn't match up.
What do you mean doesn't match up?
Jesus was born somewhere else and then somewhere else. It
Where,
doesn't
where?
match up.
Where?
Read it and you will see.
Jesus was born.
Even the descendants of Jesus never even match up. You read it and
Descendants
you will
of
check.
Jesus never had any descendants.
Oh, read it. It's the read it.
Yeah.
Called genealogy, not
Oh,
descendants.
genealogy.
Yeah.
It doesn't match up. It doesn't match up at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
In what
Trust me.
regard?
At one point, it came from Solomon, and then the other one came from Nathan. It doesn't match up. You go and read
Yeah.
and
Jesus happens to have two people related to him in terms of parents. Two.
Yeah, who and who? Who and
His
who?
mother and his father.
Which one? Tell us their name.
How many parents have you got? Two. Yeah, good.
The name.
So you would
the
have
names.
two
Give us the
genealogies
names. Give us
with
the
you.
names.
You would have two genealogies with you.
Who is Jesus' father?
That's a
Jesus-
whole nother argument. That's a whole nother argument.
Joseph was.
Joseph.
Listen to
Really?
me. Listen to me. People
That's all
considered.
argument.
Excuse me. People
ready
considered
for that.
Joseph to be his father.
No, you
Of
said
course,
people
yes.
consider.
And that's why they said. And that's why they said, "Is this not the carpenter's son?" Let's read carefully.
No.
No. Let's
Who's
read.
the actual father then?
Let's
Instead of
read.
consider-
Who is the father?
Instead of
It's Joseph.
consider,
Let's read.
is Joseph his father?
My dear friend, if only you read what you think you have
I've
read,
read it.
it'll be really useful. So
my reference.
there are two genealogies given for Jesus. One is in Matthew, another is in Luke.
It
Let's.
doesn't match up. You read it and you see it does
Well,
not match up.
unfortunately though, the it that you are referring to is something which you never read.
It's in your Bible.
Let's read carefully.
I've read it very well.
So let's read again then. This is what it says. Luke, this is how he begins. Now Jesus himself began his ministry at about 30 years of age, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph. You asked me who Jesus' father was. And now what did I say? What did I say? People
Suppose. Why isn't I saying real
considered
father?
Joseph to be his father.
Brother.
And what does Luke say?
But he never slept with Mary. So how can he be the
Well, I'm
father?
not. Excuse me.
Brother. The problem is.
That's what the Bible
I'm
said.
not asking you for your concerns about
No,
them.
it's not mine. It's what the Bible
My
said.
dear friend, I'm not asking you for your grievances about their married life. That's not the question here. The question is, can Jesus have two genealogies? That's the question. And the answer is, yes, of course. Through Mary, who you and I agree are his mother, is his mother. And the other person, the argument is, I am saying Joseph was considered to be Jesus' father, just like how Luke records, and therefore Jesus can legitimately have at least a second genealogy, at least.
If you're saying
The problem is.
consider,
Okay.
this is in the air. Like, what is?
All right.
I know this problem.
Are you an expert in Jewish history?
What's the point? What's the point of that?
Going through your
What's the
Bible.
point?
Brother.
Are you an expert
Brother.
in Jewish history?
And you
Brother.
The point of that.
I never said I am.
The initial question.
Well, at
The
least
initial.
I'm not
Brother.
scoffing
The
here.
initial question was,
Yeah.
who is Matthew? Who is Luke? Why
Jesus is
do you
apostles.
believe them?
Because they've written history.
But they are fake history.
Like what?
Like
Jesus is-
I don't know. Harry Potter is not a.
Let's read this.
Okay, he's bringing out the books. Bringing out the books.
Okay, we're gonna see.
Bringing out the books.
So let's find out which
So
portion.
you're gonna prove to
Let's-
me why you believe.
Let's
Matthew,
find out,
Luke,
my dear
John,
friend, which portions of Matthew and Mark and Luke and John are fake history. Yeah? You need to help me out. I'm going to give you what I know to be true. You teach me, please, and correct me. So let's go through this. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John talk about a particular Jesus, whose mother was Mary, whose brother was James, who himself was called Christ, and so on. All four talk about a very particular Jesus who was called the Christ. Josephus agrees. Tacitus agrees. And I'm assuming you don't know about both of these
Why
historians.
do you believe them?
These are historians. What do you know about Josephus?
What do you know about Luke?
Now, question.
What do you know about Matthew?
You're
Because
coming-
the author, the author themselves, in the script and the
The
Bible,
moment you don't know the answer, you go back to your original question.
Brother.
Seems to be a pattern here. Question, my dear friend.
Be an historian.
My dear friend.
Be an historian.
Answer the question.
Does not mean that what I say is true.
Right. Now, let's deal with this. So you are saying being a historian doesn't mean what he says is true.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. I never said anything that a historian says has to be true. Never said that.
Okay.
Number two, I'd like to then ask, what do you know about what I'm talking about? To an extent, you are rejecting this. I'm asking you.
But brother, the problem is that's your belief. I didn't say that I believe in Luke, Matthew, and
You're
that's your belief.
you're going back in circles
You
here.
say because he was asking a proof about Jesus. You say your answers was in the Bible. So I say, why do you believe the scripture in the Bible?
Yeah.
But you give.
And what did I say?
You didn't give me.
What did I say?
An answer.
Oh, really? He asked me
Because he
multiple
said-
times, and your friend, do you know him? Oh, okay. He doesn't even want to back you up here.
But you say, are we friends?
I
So
can
let's-
handle
let's-
myself.
No,
It's
no,
good.
he's not your friend. Yeah. Good. Oh, no. Now that's fine. Now,
Question. You just asked him, how does he know Luke and the rest of them, right?
no. The question you asked
If
me
you want-
was,
if you want, brother,
why do I believe?
I have a great example. For example, Luke didn't say in his text that his name is Luke. So,
Because I saw from the back, I said, my friend.
so how the gospel are according to Luke, but in the gospels, there is nothing about Luke saying, yeah, I'm Luke, I'm writing about Jesus. So
unfortunately, my
how
dear
do you find the name Luke?
Unfortunately, my dear friend, literature
That's the
happens.
problem. That's the problem. You see,
My dear friend.
that's not because I come with a book and I say it's the word of God that you need to believe me.
No, never.
I need proof about it.
I
You
know,
see?
I know.
The problem is the book that you have here. You have statement about it, but you had any proof of the truthful about Luke, Matthew, John, and I don't know.
So the
other
person
one.
of Jesus in history called the Messiah, written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, has been testified by historians.
Okay. I'm gonna check. I'm gonna check.
Do
Maybe
you have
it's
the
gonna be easier
capacity
for
to
you.
deal with history?
Brother, maybe it's
To
gonna
me,
be
it
easier
seems
for
like you don't seem to have the capacity to deal with history. That seems to be the problem here.
Do you have a Bible in the time of
That's
from
what they're
Jesus?
saying. They're saying
Do you have
the
a
Bible is written according to.
Yeah.
So who is that person that is according to, that is writing that according?
Yeah. That's the
It's not
problem.
Luke himself that is writing
Yes.
it.
Before-
Somebody else is writing it according
Yeah.
to. I can lie and say according to you. Doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
Winners that write history.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. My dear friends, let's put it this way. Time and
The
time
victim
again.
tells the story,
My
not
dear,
the victim.
excuse me, my dear friend, time and time again, people bring up this basic fallacious argument, time and time again. The person who wrote the book of Luke never said, I am Luke, and therefore, how do we believe?
what
As
do you
if,
name
as
Luke?
if, one second, as if the statement, I am Luke, if it existed in that book, you would readily believe. Even if the statement was there, I wouldn't readily believe. I don't believe the book was written by Luke purely because it happens to say I am written by Luke, which it doesn't say, or according to Luke. Yeah. The reason, my dear friend, the reason we know, you may get a better deal for you, my dear friend, if you go to confused.com. The reason Christians know Mark wrote the Gospel of Mark.
Are you saying
Luke,
Christians? Are you saying Christians or
Luke,
people?
Luke.
If you're saying Christians, then
And if you're using the word
Christians don't
no,
come later on. Are you talking about later on, or are you talking about the existence?
Can I please finish and then you can challenge? So, in history, people are aware of the identities of the writers of the Gospels which are there in the Bible through the simple fact of these writers handing down.
Okay.
You don't even
But-
wait for
but
me to
the
finish
text-
to you.
the text-
This is the problem. This is the problem. Plenty of questions, never wait for an answer. Are you a Muslim, sir? Are you a Muslim, sir?
So what?
Plenty of
What's the
ready-made
problem?
questions
So what?
and ready-made.
So what?
I'll tell you so what. I'll tell you so what.
What's the problem?
I'll tell you so what.
Yeah, tell me.
Actually,
Plenty of ready-made questions and plenty of ready-made impatience. Not waiting for an answer. That's a problem.
No,
So
no,
what?
no.
That's a
The
problem.
problem is wrong answers.
Sorry about
from
that.
you
Go
guys.
ahead. Go ahead.
That's fine.
Let him finish.
Matthew wrote a book and commended his book.
Do you see him?
Impatient. Brother, let him be impatient, bro. That's how
Who
we
trained you, my dear friend?
No, go on.
Who trained you?
Go on.
Was that the gentleman who trained you?
Go on. No problem.
See the language that he trained you.
Go on. Go on.
Who trained you?
Go on, brother.
Who trained you? Well, of course.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry
There
about
seems
that.
to be a pattern here.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
All okay. Now, if you hold your patience, yeah, good. Matthew wrote a book and handed it down to people who were sensible enough to know who handed the book to them. And this community is what we call Christian church. Wrote a book, gave it to the church, the community of saints, Christians, first century, gave it to them. They happened to remember who gave it to them. They read it, made copies of it, and spread the book around. Do people think Matthew wrote the book purely because it says, according to Matthew, which was like what you might know, was added later on? The text, according to Matthew, was added later on, not blindly, but just as a codification of what was known to be true without the codified information. They knew it. They knew who handed the text to them. And that was handed from one person to another. So just like how you know who trained you. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Peter, Paul, James were popular first century Christian leaders. Jesus appointed many of them personally in his own life before he was crucified. So popular figures wrote things down and others remembered that these people wrote things down and gave it to them.
Can I say something? Yeah. But they're not Christians. They're not Christians.
I don't know what...
They're not Christians.
I know.
Zero out.
Unfortunately,
They are not Christians.
Unfortunately, I'm not looking for your comments, your ideas here. I
They
want
are
the
not
truth.
Christians.
I want the
Have you
truth.
been to Israel? Have you been to Israel?
Why
If
should
you've been to
I?
Israel,
Why
you know they're not Christians.
What do you mean
they're
they're
not
not
Christians?
What do you mean they're not?
You just said the book was handed over to them because they're Christians. That's what you said.
No, I didn't say
Yes, go
because
back.
they
You
were
can
Christians.
play it back again. You can play it back again and watch it.
What is what is your challenge?
They
They're
are
not
not
Christians. Who are they?
Christians.
Who are they?
The Jewish guys.
Well, yeah,
They're not
true. Yeah,
Christians.
Jewish Christians. Yeah, true. Jewish Christians.
Jewish Christian.
It's pretty much like arguing they're not human beings.
What's a Jewish Christian?
They're not human beings. They're
What's a
Christians.
Jewish Christian?
The problem is
Jews by ethnicity. Jews
Christians by religion.
My dear friend, the idea of Jesus, the idea of Christ the Messiah is a very Jewish idea.
for you. Excuse me.
Did they believe
Excuse
in
me.
Jesus though?
Why don't you
Brother,
follow the
brother.
laws of the Jews
No,
then?
I'm not asking a question, bro. I'm not against
Well,
you. You're right. You're right. But
You asked a question and you turned around when the answer was said.
sorry.
The answer was the idea of Christ, Messiah, is Jewish. And therefore, someone who introduced the idea of being a Christian, i.e. a
Can you repeat
follower,
that again, sorry?
i.e.
The idea of Christ is what?
the term Christ refers to the idea, is a translation for the term Messiah, Meshiach in Hebrew, which is an idea in Jewish history. And therefore, anyone who spreads the idea of Messiah spreads a Jewish idea, not a non-Jewish idea. It's a Jewish idea. So Jesus being the Messiah is a Jewish message transferred to all sorts of countries in the world.
So where did you get the Christian message?
There is no such thing called a Christian message. What do you mean by
The
Christian
problem
message?
is
The religion.
No. If Jesus doesn't
Christianity.
rise
Let's
up,
put it this way.
if
Let's
Jesus
put it
doesn't
one
rise
second.
up, cannot become
1 second, Jake. 1 second, Jake. 1 second, Jake. 1 second. So you were here for more than 5 minutes, sir. Did you realize we were talking about a person called Jesus?
yes.
Did you realize we were talking about people called Matthew, Mark, Luke, John? Did you realize we were talking about literature written by them? Nowhere were we talking about religion, were we? We were talking about history of people.
Okay, are we talking about Yahushua or are we talking about Jesus?
My dear friend, I don't know your level of knowledge about Jesus, but unfortunately for you, Jesus, when he sent his apostles who are the official representatives, not you, his own official representatives, unfortunately for you, care to note down scriptures in Greek, not Hebrew. And in Greek, they did not care to record things down as Yeshua, but rather as Jesus. And therefore, if you think you need to get back to Hebrew words, may I please correct you, even Paul didn't think so. You might know better than Paul. If that is the case, I might want you to check out your history. Paul knows better than you. Peter knows better than you on what ought to be preached. And they chose to write in Greek, not Hebrew. And therefore the argument, and therefore the argument, and therefore the argument, and therefore, my dear friend, and therefore the argument is not whether it's Yeshua or Jesus. The argument rather is who is the person behind the name.
Okay.
And the person behind the name died.
Excuse me, sir. What is your name?
Arul.
Your name would forever be Aaron. Don't change his name.
No, it's not
You
Arul.
want to argue correctly. You don't change the name. My name is always my name,
This is
whatever
silly.
language it is.
You know,
don't change
how
the
many
name.
else are there in-
The problem-
how many else are there?
The foundation of your argument, you speak well, but the foundation is wrong.
Yeah,
Your
that's
point,
why.
back.
my
That's
dear
why.
friend,
That's
My
why.
dear friend.
Because you talk about Matthew. You talk about Matthew.
Your argument
But
on a name that is false, a name that
Do
is
you
like
know
400
how many-
years old.
how many-
You are wrong.
how many-
Go back. I will support you, but your foundation
please
must
support
be
me.
correct.
Please support me.
The problem
Please,
is, in
my
the
dear
history,
friend, please support me.
we want-
I need help right away.
I heard you. I heard you. Why do-
I need
heard
help.
you.
I need help right away.
Brother, I heard you. I heard you.
Jesus.
I need your help right
I
away.
heard you.
Can you please help me? I
heard
need your help right
I
away.
heard you. I heard you.
Can you
Yeah?
please help me?
Jesus.
Can you please
I
help
heard.
me?
I heard you.
Do you think that we're standing here and
I
don't
thought you
know-
were helping me. I don't see the help. I don't see the help coming through.
You see, he didn't
My
want you
dear
to hear
friend,
me.
can I please ask you for your
Do you
help?
think people who listen to you have no knowledge?
You don't seem to.
That-
You don't seem to.
That's the problem.
Proud about ignorance. Can I please ask you a question?
It's a void. It's a void.
How many else are there in English?
I heard you. About
How many else are there in English?
Wait.
Now, before you dance, maybe you might want to learn a few things. How
I heard
many
you
else are
about-
there in English?
I heard you about history.
I have to go back. Simple thing I'm saying to you is the name is the name. If your name is Jacob, you are forever Jacob in whatever language you are. If
So,
your name,
do you know-
don't change his name. If you call
Do
him
you
his real
know
name, I will listen to you.
how many else are there?
You can't be up
Do you
here-
speak English, my
you
dear
can't be
friends?
up here
How
preaching
many
about
else are there
Jesus.
in English?
Who the hell is Jesus?
L, the alphabet L. How many are there? Just one L. Unfortunately, in my mother
Okay,
tongue,
we're going to change Muhammad's name now.
Excuse me.
Muhammad now is going to
Yeah,
bear
do you
Luke.
change
oh wow, wow, wow.
Muhammad's name?
Can you please
Muhammad will
wait?
start bearing Luke.
Can you please wait before just throwing in more? Oh, there we go. Plenty of ignorance. And
We were talking about history.
Muhammad will start bearing Luke.
My mother
You
tongue, there are
avoid
three
me.
L's. My name cannot be represented properly in English.
see?
The lady seemed to have thought that my
you
name
know,
can never
that's
change
my question.
regardless of the language. But unfortunately for
know,
her,
you can
even
answer my
in the
question.
example of my name necessarily changes with the change of language. My name is Arul with a ul, which doesn't exist in English, and therefore it just happens to be Arul in English. Similarly, Jesus could not, the name Jesus, Yeshua, could not be represented in Greek. And therefore, during transliteration of the name had to morph to accommodate the features available in the language. The lady suggested that never could happen. You really need to go back to the Hebrew name, which is a problem. But anyway, that's a long story. Now you just came.
Answer his question here.
Yeah, answer my question.
What's your question? Sorry.
You
history
say
question.
about the history because
Fake
the main subject here was why do you believe Luke, John, and everything? And you say that because in a history, but I can be in the same point of view, but the problem is, do you have like a Bible at the time at Jesus? The problem is no.
Well, you ask
Christians
Christians
don't have Bible at the time I'm Jesus. Maybe you can show me.
No, because listen,
before we go to the maybe.
Show me, because you're
No,
talking
wait,
about
excuse me.
you are talking about history. So for history you need proof. You can say that Matthew, John write about something about the gospel, and then they give to the people, but you didn't have a gospel from this time. So how can you say that on that time they do it? So
So you ask a question, you answer your own question. Now you're going to comment further on your own question. How does this work, really?
Answer.
This is P52.
Can I ask one question?
John Ryland's papyri.
Okay.
P52.
Of
One of the.
Is
Are
that
you
the
going
Bible?
to? Are you going to?
patient.
Patience, yeah.
Is that the Bible?
Well, of course it is.
Is the Bible?
Of course.
That is the Bible? That's everything that you had from the Bible at that time.
Well, obviously
But
not.
your
It's just
Bible,
it's just a
more
fragment.
big from this one.
Well, obviously, this
So
is a fragment.
what's come?
Your question was.
Yeah.
Were there gospels in existence in the first century? That was your question.
My question was, did you have a Bible? A Bible. So
Including the gospels in the first century.
everything. This Bible that you have in your hand. Do you have a Bible from that time?
Yeah. All of this Bible was written.
Did you have it? Yeah or not?
Yes.
Okay. Show to me.
All of the Bible.
Show to me.
Who do you think
Maybe
you are?
on the internet.
No, wait a second. Who do you think you are?
Maybe on the internet you can show me.
You don't seem to know history. How does history work, my dear friend?
Can I ask one question? Can anybody prove it? Can any religion, can anybody prove it?
The problem is,
Can-
for
can-
example,
can anyone?
The problem is, for example, Muslims had Quran at the time from
No, this-
from
no,
Muhammad.
no.
The problem is,
wait.
the problem is,
That's a lie.
they didn't have.
That's a lie, bro.
Hold on.
That's a lie,
Do you have
bro.
internet?
Show us a
Do you
copy
have
of the
internet?
7th
Because
century
I don't
Quran.
have internet here. Do you have internet?
Don't
We
make
can
up
look
things.
at.
Don't make
We
up
can
things.
look at.
Don't make up things.
You
on the fly. Don't do
didn't.
that.
No,
Let's
brother.
come back to the
You
Bible.
didn't
Let's
have.
come back to the Bible.
You didn't have Bible for that
Go back
time.
to the
Excuse
Bible.
me. Let's come back to the
You
Bible.
didn't have.
We don't lie. Like you just make up things as it suits you.
Did you have?
The answer is pretty simple. Yes, Paul lived in the first century. Peter lived in the first century. James,
British
The book.
can I please finish?
Ask about the book.
Can I
Because
please finish?
all the information
Can
that you
I
have
please
come
finish?
from this book.
Can I please finish?
Yeah.
Matthew lived, Mark lived, Luke, John, Paul, Peter, James, Jude, everyone who were writers of the New Testament lived in the first century. And
100 years
you wouldn't
after
wait,
Jesus.
would you? You wouldn't wait, would you? No, you didn't. Obviously you didn't. We have manuscriptal evidence coming from early 2nd century in a wide landmass across regions surrounding Israel, far away, various languages, thousands of manuscripts from the 2nd century, pointing to the fact that in the 1st century, the original manuscripts were written in Greek in Israel. There is no other explanation possible in Greek. In Greek, yeah. You never listened. I have a suspicion you didn't even listen to my answer.
I listened to your answer.
Well, what did you listen?
You said.
See you next time. I have to go.
What did you hear?
I was asking about a Bible at the time of Jesus, and you say to me that the only thing that you have is this little card size, the little card size document on the photos. That's everything that you have from the Bible at that time. So how can you say that all the Bible is the same that what Jesus had in the past? How can you say that?
Can I please point out to you something, my dear friend? I really don't know who.
But you didn't answer my question.
I'm going to make a comment here, please. The comment is this: I really don't know who trained you and sent you here. I really don't know. But whoever trained you,
I said the truth.
Whoever trained you has given you insufficient idea of how history works. You seem to stand in a public place like Hyde Park make derogatory remarks about the historical validity of the Bible using terms like the little piece, this and that, with no insight which suggests to me you have any clue about the manuscriptal evidences for the Bible. Without having any clue, you have the audacity to stand here and challenge. And that to me is very, very poor training. You might,
But in
you
my
might
poor
want to take
answer,
that feedback.
my poor question, you can answer to my poor question.
The poor question,
So
let me
I was
answer.
asking, did you have a Bible at the time of Jesus? You
I
don't
answered
have.
yes already
You
multiple
don't
times.
have.
So you don't want my answer, do you?
The
I answered multiple times. Yes,
after 40
yes,
years of the death
yes. Matthew, Mark,
Let me see.
40 years of the death.
The Bible at the time.
Matthew, Mark, Luke,
There's only
John,
one God
James.
and
Oh,
his
let me.
name
Can you show me the Quran now? From Muhammad's time. Can
Do
you
you
show
have
me
internet?
one?
Do you
Can you
have
show me
internet?
one?
Do you
There's
have
only
Can
one
you show
God.
me
Do
one
you have
Quran from
internet?
Muhammad's time,
I don't
please?
have.
It's
Quran from
only,
Muhammad's time,
it's
please.
only one
show us,
God,
bro.
and his name
Full
is.
copy.
It's
You want
only
the
one
full
God,
copy?
and his name
Proof
is.
of a full
Yahweh,
copy from
Jesus.
the 7th century.
That's it.
There are a
That's it.
lot.
There's only one
of-
God.
There you
and
go.
his name
There are a
is-
lot of things about it.
Yeah, find out, please.
Nothing serious, sit, nada.
But you know, Jesus, they killed him. After they killed him, then a man made religion. A man, after 40 years,
Call him.
yeah, of the
Dear friend,
the death
all
of Jesus,
available evidences point out to
then the first Bible
events.
was written
No, no.
after 40 years.
So,
yeah.
people have tried
Yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
People
That's
have tried.
This is the history. If you want to believe Jesus was someone and then come back
work.
and then he tell his friends,
Oh,
"Wait
it's okay,
for
it's okay.
me, I'm coming back soon," and then Mary Magdalene. Of course, they made their. They made.
Why? Why did
Man-
they make up?
Why?
Why did they make up?
Because humanity, they always waited for someone special to come and save
What are you
them.
talking about? Someone special. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, everywhere, everyone
Do
we're
you
going.
believe if Jesus
My
was,
dear- my dear friend.
why Jesus, if Jesus is God and Son of God, and He died for us for the sin, Adam, this is all rubbish, my friend. This is all stories. Wake up, be good human being. I will try to be good human being and live this rubbish away.
How can you be?
They used to kill
gave you
people. The name of God.
Who gave you
the,
life?
the Christian, they used to hang people. Hang. And they used to torture people. These people, they claim they know Jesus.
Who gave you life?
You know how many priests they had sex with little kids.
Are you?
You know?
Are you?
Can
Are
you
you an
imagine? And
atheist?
they say we are holy people.
Are you an
we are-"
atheist, sir?
You know?
Are you an
And
atheist,
they
sir?
were pedophiles.
Are you an atheist, sir?
No, I'm telling you, I'm not an idiot. I'm a human being. I am free. Religion needs to die. You know religion.
My dear
Don't
friend,
teach religion.
people who seem to have the same idea like
You wait, so you bring their
people who
Jesus,
have had the
Jesus,
same
yeah.
idea like you in history have killed more people than even all
Crazy
Christians
people.
put
You
together.
brainwash people. Be a good human being, my
No,
friend.
friend.
Wake up.
No French Charles
Wake up.
killed more people in a
I
matter of
am.
2
I'm
years.
already. I don't like religion. That's why I'm here. I don't like any religion. It's all man-made.
Neither do I, which is good. So let's come back to Jesus. We're
There's
talking
no-
about religion.
all religion.
We are talking about the person who lived, died, came back alive.
We need to love one another.
Yeah, proof,
We need
please.
to be good human being. And we need to be brothers
Good.
and sisters in humanity.
Yeah, please.
Close to this life. We need to enjoy our life. No war. No war. Why should we not like one another without religion? We are brothers and sisters. We can just talking. At least
Yeah.
take
What does it say?
screwing humanity of the name of the religion. Look what you did in Iraq.
What does it say?
You do not know the date from the Quran. I'm gonna search for you the date.
So who wrote the Quran?
So
Who wrote the Quran? Did Muhammad
let
write
you
the Quran?
change. Let you change.
Let's read.
Do you have the proof of that?
Let's read.
Okay.
So radiocarbon analysis has dated the
He
past.
said-
My dear friend, radiocarbon analysis has dated the parchment on which the text is written to the period between AD 568. Did Muhammad write the Quran in AD 568? No, question. Question, please.
Let me read it.
Question, please.
Let me read it. Let me read
Who wrote the
it.
Quran?
I'm gonna say you. Let me read it. Let me read it.
85, 68.
Let me read it.
45 with 95.4% accuracy.
You didn't know the date. About
Catholic
Islam. You didn't know
and
the date.
Muslim.
Who, me?
So, okay.
I know Muhammad. I know
fuck is
Muhammad
that?
was born in 570 AD.
Let me
570
Let
AD.
me show you. Why do you have this? Let
The
me
question.
show you. Let me show you.
Excuse me.
Let me show you.
When
Why
was
do you have
Muhammad born? When was Muhammad born?
this? You see?
When was Muhammad born?
Let me show you. Let me show you.
When?
Because I know in French but not in English. Let me show you. Thank
So
you.
please tell me how Muhammad wrote the Quran before he was born, please.
Not before you.
Well, of course, 568 is 2 years before he was born.
You're gonna see.
See what?
You're gonna see.
Are you going to revise the timeline for Muhammad here? Excuse me, my dear. When did Uthman come up with the 4 Uthmanic mushafs? When did he do that?
Wait.
Have you seen a Sufi in your life?
No. You seem to hate God so much, and so you are a terrible man, I should say, my dear friend.
He said he was a good man, but he's not doing very
You're
well.
not a good man by rejecting the source of your life. The moment, let me ask you, sir. Yes, sir. Someone, my dear friend, let's get his help. Do you think gratefulness is good or bad? Gratefulness, showing gratitude, is that good? So, can we please get his help? He says gratitude is good. So, lack of gratitude or ingratitude, I think, if I'm right, ingratitude, is that good or bad?
Ingratitude is very bad.
Very, very bad. So let me ask. So if someone came to you, let's say you're shivering in the cold, yeah, and someone came to you and say, "Oh, you're shivering. Please have this jacket." Is it good for you to show gratitude?
Amen.
If someone were to give you good things, you show gratitude. Yeah. This gentleman got his life from God. This gentleman got his life from God, yet chooses to reject him. Is that good or bad?
I am not interested in God.
What do you mean? How do you know?
How do you know?
Where else did he get his life from?
God is not here. We made
How
God.
do you know?
From the parliament?
How do you know?
The question simple. Where did he get his life from? From the
Never
parliament?
made any contact with
Now we know, I'll come to that. But let me ask you some questions before that. Could he have got his life from the parliament? Could he have got his life from the hospital? Could he have got his life from doctors?
Possibly his clone.
No, cloning is dealing with cells which already exist. Question is, how did those cells begin to exist? Could he have got his life from his parents? No, obviously not. So this gentleman has not got his life from any conceivable source which he relates to currently. My dear friend, you haven't got your life, according to our friend here who is our arbitrator, you haven't got your life from the hospital. You haven't got your life from your parents. You haven't got your life from doctors. You haven't got your life from the parliament. You haven't got life from any of these sources which you normally relate to. You seem to have got your life from beyond physical existence. And there is only one viable source which could have given you life, and that is God. Only one viable source. And to Him you show a complete lack of gratitude. Are you a good man?
This is all brainwashing, my friend.
No, this is called a question.
I am sick and tired. I am sick and tired.
Answer the question.
Amen. Listen.
No.
I
Let's
tell
not
you
deal
one
with
thing.
brainwashing. Let's deal with the question. Who did you get your life from? When you show ingratitude to the source of your life, are you being a good man? Question.
Okay.
That's a question. What's that?
Yeah. I'm being good. Yeah.
What?
I'm being good, yes.
You're being good. When last did you say, God, thank you? When last did you say that? Are you really? Okay, that's good then. So at least he's saying thank you, God, which is really
I
good.
don't know which God though.
That's fine. As long as you appreciate you got your life from God, that's a good first
I
step.
don't say that. Thank you to
Good
God. I
first
never say
step.
that.
Now, let's take back beyond the
I
first.
say thank you, Mother Nature. Thank
Which
you.
Mother Nature gave you life?
No, thank you. How many love for, thank you. We
My
want
dear
to live.
friend, which Mother Nature gave you life?
No, you God. No, you God who has to die, and they killed him, and then and
Which,
then he raised up
which
again,
Mother
and then
Nature
he
gave
said,
you
and
life?
then he
Can you
died.
please ask her to come visit all the hospitals across the world?
I say that because
We need life. Can she give life, please?
Come on. Listen, you want
Precisely.
You want answer.
In other words, you
want
yourself
an
know you
answer.
made a nonsensical
You want
point.
an answer. You want an answer.
Yeah. Which Mother Nature gave you life? I need an
Which
answer.
Mother Nature?
Yeah.
You are asking. This is what God? Who is this God? What's name?
You know what he's trying to say?
Okay.
He is saying, how can you ask about Mother
Does
Nature
God
when she
have?
doesn't
Does
exist?
God have
Is
a
his
name?
point.
Does God have a
Implicit
name?
there. No.
Does God have a name?
Yes, of course he does.
What's his name?
Yahweh.
It's rubbish. Yahweh. Yahweh in Judaism or Semitism or Sumerian ideology or Babylonian. He had a wife, and his wife was called Asher.
Well, obvious.
Asher. Yahweh. He was not the God. Yeah, that was already God before
We're talking
Judaism.
about history.
Yahweh.
And you say that the people at time
Yahweh.
Matthew wrote
Yahweh.
the book. I say okay,
No.
but the problem is
No,
you didn't have a Bible at the time of Jesus. So how can you say that Jesus had this book that you have on your hand? Because yeah, you never had the book. So I say, how can you believe? That's
Quran
what.
claims that Allah gave him
So
a book.
the problem is they have a book. In fact, they didn't have a book at the time of Jesus. So how can you say that in the history?
Go, show
What
him,
do you have in your hand?
Show him the evidence. Show him the evidence
Problem.
that you found.
Because you have nothing at the time at Matthew or whatever
about the Quran.
about the Bible. So now you ask me, wait. You asked me that there is no Quran at the time of Muhammad. You say to me.
I have in the
Say to
same
me.
discussion.
So now
Islam and
I'm going to prove to you that there are a Quran at the time of Muhammad.
Let's see.
Yeah, show us.
Okay.
Show us.
Can you read it for me? This paragraph.
The result of radiocarbon dating of the parchment on which the text is written places the manuscript in the period between 568 and 645 with 95.4% probability. The testing was commissioned from the University of Oxford and carried out in 2014. This result suggests that the manuscript dates back to the 1st century of Islam, close to the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, about 570 to 632, and the rule of the first three caliphs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have texts from this period, but you didn't have a Bible at the period.
let's not
You
confuse
didn't
them.
have.
Let's-
What was my question? My question was because we were talking about we were talking about history. I say to you, why do you believe Mark, John, Luke in the Bible? And you say to me, it's because it's history. I say, okay, do you have a book at the time from Mark, Luke, and John? But you didn't have.
No, you said we didn't
You
have.
didn't have, because the Bible that you have here.
Yeah, obviously
It's not-
Matthew has
it's
to
not-
write when he
Do
was
you have-
alive. Can a dead man write?
Do you have a Bible at the time
Can
of Jesus?
a dead man
No,
write?
they don't.
That you don't
Can
have. So
a
how
dead
can
man-
you say that this is the word of Jesus?
Let's deal with the Bible and the
people, they
Quran
wrote Jesus.
separately,
They
please.
never met
Let's not
Jesus.
They never
confuse.
met Jesus.
Never ever. in
Thank
their
you.
life.
Excuse
They
me.
never met Jesus.
Let's deal with the Quran first here, please. Yeah.
They never met Jesus.
So can we deal with the Quran first here, please? 568 and 645, between those years is when this manuscript is dated to. Question, when did Muhammad live? When did Muhammad live?
Where did Muhammad receive the Quran? That's between
Question.
600 and
Let me repeat my
632.
question here.
It's 600 and
Let me
632.
repeat the question here.
The problem that you didn't know the Prophet Muhammad. You
Let
didn't
me-
know him.
You don't know what I know and what I don't know. Let's stick to what.
Because you say, because he didn't receive his Quran, the Quran, when he was born.
Before he was born, obviously
Before
he didn't
of,
receive, according
of
to-
when he was born.
Did he receive the Quran before he was born?
He received the Quran 40 years.
How could
Yeah,
you
yeah.
define
40 years
Let's deal with
after.
timeline.
So
Excuse
the
me,
problem is
I'm sorry.
that's between 600 and
How do you know
632.
these things, young man? You are just
Question.
professor.
So you don't seem to deal with the question I asked.
You don't know
The
about
question I asked is
No, it's
simple.
not the history.
When did Muhammad live?
Muhammad.
When did Muhammad live?
According to my knowledge, he come from
When did Muhammad live?
northern in Jordan. according to my.
Well, your knowledge
He was
obviously wrong in all
He was
sorts of
from
ways.
Petra.
You see,
When did
the
Quran- when did
problem is,
He was not
I
even
ask you
Arabic.
history.
The problem
No,
is you
the
don't
problem
seem to
is,
know how to
I
answer
ask
a
you,
question.
I ask you about
That seems to be the
history.
problem.
You don't have a Bible at the time of Jesus.
I can
Do
talk
you have-
about the Bible in 5 minutes.
Do
my
you
dear
have?
friend. Let's
Why
talk
do you
about the
avoid
Quran.
it? Why do you avoid it? You didn't have.
Let
Do
me
you
tell
have it?
Do you have what? I agree
A
with
Bible
you.
at the
You know
time
what
of
the problem
Jesus.
is, my dear
A
young
Bible.
friends? You know what the problem
Do you
is?
have?
The same with
Do you have?
This gentleman asked
Do
the
you have?
question,
Do you have?
presents an answer,
you cannot
and when I
come to
try
the
to
same.
challenge,
Do you have?
when I try to challenge his
Do you
point, he
have?
runs away,
Do you have?
talks
We
about
don't have-
something else.
You know,
That
do you
seems
have
to be a
real
problem
Quran?
here.
Do you have-
Can
you
we?
don't have-
Which one do you?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You can.
That's why
You can pick your
Do we
choice.
have the real Quran?
You can pick your choice. We can either speak about the Bible first or the Quran. Which one do you choose?
We're not talking about the Bible.
Which one do you choose?
You say to me that when he was talking with the brother, you are talking about Jesus, and that's why I asked you,
Question.
why do you believe what
Do you
is in
want
the
to talk
Bible?
about the Bible first
Talk
or
about
the
the
Quran?
Bible. Come on, talk about
Do
the
you
Bible.
want to talk about the Quranic manuscript? you
Come
show
on,
about?
we're gonna talk about your belief. I didn't say nothing about my belief. You said that.
I thought you
that
wanted
said-
to check out the Birmingham manuscript here.
You say that the Bible is true.
I said that very well. That is true.
You claim that the Bible is true. I didn't claim that the Quran is true. I didn't claim that
I
the
thought
Bible
you
was
came
true.
to me with a phone
You
showing
said-
me a manuscript, didn't
because
you?
you asked me. But
And therefore, do you want to talk about that?
we talk about your manuscript.
Would you like to talk about the
your
Quranic
claim?
manuscript?
We talk about your claim.
Would you like to talk about the Quranic
We
manuscript?
talk about your claim.
In
I
other
claim
words,
anything.
do we agree?
You claim.
Do we agree?
You claim about the Bible. You claim the Bible.
Do we agree? You can't talk about the Quran. Do we agree?
If you want. Okay.
Can we talk about the Quran first, please?
I'm talking about the Bible. You claim something. I didn't
You
claim
need to
something.
really go back to your
I
trainers
didn't-
here.
I didn't claim
Your training
anything.
didn't go through well.
I didn't claim
Quran.
anything.
When was the Quran, this particular manuscript, when is that dated to? When did Muhammad live?
You avoid. You see, you avoid.
Question.
You avoid.
When did? Are you Muslim, sir?
You avoid.
Are you Muslim,
You
sir?
know the
A
answer.
good Muslim,
You
bad
avoid.
Muslim,
You avoid it.
a Muslim who is
avoid.
ashamed of the
You
Quran.
don't have a manuscript at the time of Jesus. So why do you believe this book?
I can talk about the Bible.
Why do you believe this book? You don't
It's
have
the
the
Quran. I
manuscript.
don't believe in the
You
Quran.
don't have the manuscript at that time.
I don't believe in the
Why do you
Quran.
believe this? I don't
All
talk about it.
right. If you want to talk about the Bible, obviously you can't talk about the Quran, and therefore you're running away from it,
You're
which is
running
really
away.
good.
You avoid. Not
Really? Can we talk about the Quran then?
We were talking about the
Ah,
Bible.
again,
Why,
run away,
why
run
are
away.
you avoiding?
Can
Why are you
What do
avoiding?
you think?
Why
What do
are
you
you
think
avoiding?
he's trying to avoid the conversation about the Quran?
It's
Do you think
avoiding.
so? Well,
Why
what
do
is
you
happening
avoid?
here? He wants
You
to.
avoid-
So obviously the Quranic manuscripts do not stand up to scrutiny in complying with Islamic tradition. The Quranic manuscript that you are talking about, which comes from Birmingham, does not conform to your idea that Uthman burnt every Quranic manuscript prior to the Uthmanic Mushafs. Because this manuscript contradicts that. And therefore, you yourself don't know what you're talking about. So can we either say, either you take the validity of the dating of this particular manuscript, or you believe in Uthman. Choose one of those two. You can have only one.
the problem-
Don't have the cake and eat it because they are contradictory.
The problem
Now let's
is-
get back to the
problem
Bible.
The problem is that you claim that the Bible, the Bible
I
is
can
true.
talk about the
You
Bible
claim that
all
the
my
Bible is
life,
true.
and I'm here exactly for that particular purpose.
But you
Let me
don't
now
have,
begin
you
talking
don't
about
have
the
a
Bible.
Bible at the time of Jesus. You don't
Let
have
me-
it. So how can you believe this?
Is it a good idea to ask a question and answer that question yourself? Is that a good
A
idea?
prophet to the Jews with the book.
Ah, you want to support your brother there.
It doesn't make sense.
When he has a question for which obviously he wants my answer, is it not wise for him to wait for my answer?
Once they were
What else? What do you know? What do you know?
Brother, the problem is.
Please tell me a few things you know.
Brother. The problem is he was saying that.
So let me ask you this:
that the gospel
when
are true.
can dead
He
men
was
write?
saying that the
One
gospel
second.
are true. So I say, why
One
do you believe
second.
the gospel are true?
One
and
second.
he said, because they are histories.
Question.
And I said, they are fake histories. So how can you say that your history is true?
Question.
And then,
Can dead men write?
Nothing.
Question.
nothing.
Can
When they
so he needs to be in training next.
you don't know
He
what-
only talks about I don't
let
know.
me
now.
just make a
Can dead men write? Obviously, dead men cannot write. But the church testifies that the Gospel of Matthew was written by Matthew. When could he have written that? Before he died? After he died?
you defend the faith.
Dead men cannot write.
Cannot what?
Right?
Okay.
You only defend.
But the church testifies
I'm telling you.
clearly that Matthew wrote the Gospel of Matthew. When could he have written that? Before he died or after he died?
The Syrian living in Middle East.
The problem is not did he Matthew
Arabia.
wrote that or not. We
The
didn't
problem, the question you are asking is, did Matthew in the first century alone?
Do you have a book for it?
Matthew.
How do you get this information?
Because the church has preserved history.
What do you believe the church?
Because what the church believes in and has communicated has been testified by even people who are not Christians.
Yeah, but
Credible
there
witnesses.
are many churches. So what do you believe on the
Which many church are you talking about?
There are many churches.
Like which ones?
There are Mormon churches.
Mormon church in the first century. In the first century.
No, yeah. That the problem is.
Which are the church in the first century? Wait a second. Mormon church in the first century. Which other first century church existed?
Which Bible?
Then let's talk about the first
Which
century
Bible do you
churches.
have? Which Bible?
Mormon church in the
You
first
see,
century
that's
according
the
to you.
problem. You say that your
The
book
problem
is
is
the truth.
you don't know what
say-
you're
no,
talking
You
about.
say that your book is the truth.
Now wait a
There are
second.
many Bibles.
I really like to learn about church history. You're teaching me now. In the first century, according to him, the Mormon church existed. Which other church existed in the first century?
Avoid me.
Which other church existed in the first
You
century?
avoid my friend. You avoid. I say, why do you believe
You
in
know you
histories
answered
of-
a point. You made a point already.
You say
Did Jehovah's Witnesses exist in the first
You
century?
say that the Bible. You say
My
that
dear
the-
friend,
you
did
believe
the
the
Seventh-day
church.
Adventists exist in the first
You
century?
say
Did the
that
Baptists,
the problem is
the Methodists,
How you
Bible,
defending my
the
friend?
Church of England,
the problem
which of
is
them
the
existed
history
in the
of
first
Bible.
century?
The problem is the history
defending
of
religion.
The problem is you
didn't know-
knowing nothing
you didn't know-
stands here
No,
talking
the
about
problem is
things which you don't know about.
didn't
That's
know
the problem.
what your book is coming from.
Question.
That's the problem.
Do you know about the religion called Mormonism? Mormonism. Yeah, Mormonism.
was a Muslim.
Do you have a rough idea as to when it began?
Before that, where we were like
Do you think it began in the first century?
Christian and Jew.
I can give you a hint.
I mean,
Mormonism began in the US.
my ancestor.
In the US. He isn't even listening now. In the US. Did the US exist in the first century?
I try to
The United States of America, did that exist in the first century?
First century.
Yeah. Oh, so obviously, Mormonism could not have started in the first century. But this gentleman doesn't think so.
I was
He doesn't
talking
even know
about
basic
I was
facts.
talking about churches.
I'm talking about churches.
Because
Exactly
you
the
believe in
church.
your church, but you believe in your church.
Which
but
church
there
are
are
you
different
talking about?
churches.
Which church? Which
There are
church?
different churches.
The first century, which
like,
church?
Like there are
And I
different
really
Bibles.
like to be
Like there are
enlightened here.
different Bibles.
I'd really like to be enlightened here. Which other church? Can you please let me know? I'd really like to research this one.
The problem was
Mormonism, what other isms in the first century?
The problem was that you didn't know where your book come from.
Oh yeah.
But you
I didn't
believe
know, but
everything. But you believe everything.
My
is
dear
wrong.
friend, I did not know, and that's where I'd like to really learn from you. In the first century, I've just learned from you, Mormonism existed. Can I please learn a few
You're
more things
avoiding.
from you?
You're avoiding. You see,
What
you're
other
avoiding.
churches existed in the first century? My dear friend, what other churches? Can I please tell you something? Can I
You're
please?
avoiding.
Feedback.
Say
Feedback.
what?
You really need to go back to your trainer and tell him his training is not sufficient for Hyde Park. Not sufficient.
If you want. With your Bible,
I really want to, that's what
you
I'm
didn't
telling
know
you.
where you come from, but it's not.
So,
Yeah, there is.
are you with him? So, the idea that Jesus, the history of Jesus did not exist in the first century is a joke. in terms of manuscriptal evidences that we have for the life of Jesus Christ, even before we get to the conclusion that the Gospels are parts of scriptures, what we need to appreciate is that Gospels are reasonable historical documents. But we have people like the gentleman who showed up here time and time again at Hyde Park, having no clue about the subject area that he is talking about, yet advances ideas like there was no Bible in the first century, there was no Jesus in the first century, and Jesus was not in the way that the Bible portrays him in the first century, and so on, making plenty of claims related to God audaciously, yet have no clue, not even the fundamental clue about the history of church. He said Mormonism existed in the first century. Unfortunately for him, Mormonism started plenty of centuries later. In the first century, there was no such thing called Mormonism. If he had mentioned things like Gnosticism, maybe I might have given him maybe 20% marks, saying, okay, he maybe knows his history a bit. If he mentioned about Arianism, I could say, oh, maybe he knows a bit. Unfortunately for him, he didn't even mention about those things. He was talking about Mormonism. If I give him half a more minute, he would talk about maybe Black Israel movement. Maybe he'd talk about Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe he would talk about Seventh-day Adventists and so on. All sorts of names which he thinks, or Methodists, or Baptists, Church of England and so on. The unfortunate thing, the tragedy, is that people who are trained and sent here with the same set of questions over and over again are not even given basic facts of the area that they are sent to challenge, which is Bible, the manuscriptal evidence, and the person of Jesus Christ. To all those who are in the Islamic Dawah team, my dear friends, I earnestly urge you, by all means, come and challenge us. We are here to be challenged. The Bible has been around for centuries after facing all challenges. We're not running away from challenge, we are here to face challenges. But the only request is, when you come here trained to challenge, do your research a bit more. Don't just rely on your Islamic resources. At least try and find what Christians think and know about the history of the church, the history of the biblical manuscripts, and the history of Jesus. At least try. I don't want you to believe in us. At least try and evaluate. And then you might come to the conclusion that what the Christian historians wrote, what the Jewish non-Christian historian Josephus wrote, what the Roman historian Tacitus, Suetonius, Pliny the Younger wrote, and what Lucian of Samosata, a Greek writer, satirist, wrote, and what Babylonian Talmud testifies about Yeshu and so on. All these resources put together gives you a consistent picture of who Jesus is. Jesus, who claimed to be the Messiah, who claimed to be divine, who was able to perform signs and wonders, who lived, died, came back alive, and the immediate followers of Jesus trusted in the fact that Jesus came back alive, and they were willing to testify for what they knew to be true, even with their own lives. This is history, solid history, and I'd like you to challenge solid history, not straw man history that you have made it up to be. Jesus is real, and He alone is able to save you. God bless you.